Hello, Megan.
Hello.
Okay, it's 5:30.
You're good.
Okay, go ahead and start.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, uh, Notice is hereby given that the City Council of City of Alpine, Texas will hold a regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th, 2020 via Zoom conference in the City of Alpine, Texas. Meeting login details may be found on www.cityofalpine.com for the purpose of considering the text agenda. This notice is posted pursuant to the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043, Texas Government Code. Public notice, use of cellular phones are prohibited in the City Council chambers during meetings of the City Council. I guess today's an exception. And members of the audience will be provided an opportunity to address the council on any agenda item after determination of a quorum and proof of notice of the meeting. Remarks will be limited to a total of 3 minutes per person. Please write your name on the list so that we may call you in order. Please speak into the microphone located, well, we'll have to skip that, located on your iPhone or your computer. If you have a petition or other information pertaining to your subject, please present it to the city secretary. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda. But if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor or council members may call a point of order to stop personal attacks. If an individual continues to personally attack or an elected official or staff member in a meeting, they may be barred. And I'll call the meeting to order right now. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody would stand up and look to your right. Pledge allegiance
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're not going to have apparently a prayer at this meeting. So, City Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Two seconds. Hold on, Cynthia.
Cynthia, do we have a quorum?
Mayor, we do have a quorum, and the notice was posted at 11 a.m. on April the 3rd, 2020.
Thank you very much. Okay, public comments, limit to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? No one? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to, we don't have any presentations or proclamations, and we'll start with the reports. I've got a report, and it has to do with the virus that's going on right now. And I'll give you the latest statistics, which were from about 3 o'clock this afternoon. Texas has 8,262 cases, and we have 1,237 deaths as a result of that. And overall, in the United States, we have over 400,000 cases. So this virus is extremely serious. And I'm sad to hear that not too many people that a few choose not to really understand or accept that this is a crisis we're in, and they're disregarding the staying at home policy or wearing their mask and whatnot. So and you're compromising not only yourself, you're compromising your friends, neighbors, and fellow residents. Also, in this report, if you notice, your gas prices have gone down considerably. They're $2.19. I had to go to the pharmacy today and I checked the prices. They were down to $2.19. And also, we started meeting on this virus about 3 weeks ago now going, and we met with some folks from the BBR, or the Big Bend Regional Hospital and the Big Bend Hospital. Hello? The county judge, the sheriff, the EMC, I heard a dog in the background. The the university, the city manager, myself, and later on, with the school district also. And then at the city council meeting that evening, our city manager again brought up, and we talked about the virus and how serious it is. We've met twice pretty much after that meeting in a week to cover what the issues are, to get updated and whatnot. And there's some folks that I want to thank. I want to thank the city council, first of all, for passing that ordinance last week before last. It's very crucial. I know it was a hard ordinance that we passed. It was going to have a great economic impact on our business community. But you know what? That will slowly recover. We also have the stimulus package that the federal government is going to put out. But you know what? If we can save a life, fantastic, because you can never bring that life back again. Money, you can. Okay? So some of the folks that I want to thank also are like porters. I mean, they went out there beyond and are doing a fantastic job. They're limited to the amount of certain items that people were hoarding, which I couldn't see why. The hotel industry for shutting down, complying, and also the Holland Hotel, they're the ones that took the first lead. Before we even signed the ordinance, they were already shut down and taking precautions for the public and for their employees. So great job there. And the rest of the business community, they've done a fantastic job. I'd say as a whole, the community has really taken this seriously, except for a handful of people that I hear say, oh, it's just a cold, it's gonna go away. It's gonna go away eventually, but look at all the deaths that it's gonna take with it. That's what concerns us. And that's why, the city council is being proactive in this matter. So we're trying to help our citizens. We took an oath to help our citizens, to protect them. And in protecting them, it's also includes their health and well-being, which I think our city council is doing a great job in that. And some of the tips that people need to understand and do is stay at home, wear your mask, your social distancing, do that, please. I see so many people still coming up to each other, face to face and talking. That's, all you're doing is inviting trouble for yourself and whoever you're talking to. And one other thing, stop hoarding, guys. The stores are open. The more you hoard, the harder it is for the stores to keep up with the demand. And right now there is a shortage of truck drivers all across the country. So, the stores are open. You still are free to go to the grocery stores, but go in there, get what you need, and then go right back home again. So far, I hear that there's a couple of vaccines they're working on. Hopefully, they can do that. But, right now we need to do what we have to do, and that's just stay at home, please, guys. Don't be driving around needlessly or anything like that. We got cell phones. You can talk to your neighbors on that and whatnot. So it's just crucial that we take care of ourselves. Some people are saying the government, hey, we're almost peaking out, but that doesn't mean we have to relax. We got to stay vigilant, because this thing could rear its ugly head instantly, like it has, and multiply. And once we kind of leveled the curves, yeah, okay, we pretty much resume with certain business opening and whatnot, but still be mindful to stay 6 foot away, and watch your social distancing, because this thing, again, like I said, it could pop its head again. And also they're saying, once we've got it taken care of, it's still going to come back again, unless you get something that can actually kill the virus. So with that, just be safe, protect yourself and your neighbors and your family. Thank you all very much. And now we'll go with reports. City attorney, I don't see anything for you. So we'll go with the city manager.
Yeah. Honorable Mayor and City Council, can everybody see my screen now with the PowerPoint? Yes. Okay, good. This evening, wanted to take everybody through a few different slides from my perspective. I've also invited Dr. Escobar, who's our health authority for the county. He's been named. Also, most of us know ACTA from a tremendous amount of work in the community and being a physician here as well. Then we'll hear from some of our core staff, Jennifer Stewart, as well as Scott Perry, Chief Martin and Chris Ruggia talking about the different impacts that coronavirus has presented to the community. So without any further ado, really wanted to kind of kick off and make sure everybody was aware of all of the updates that we're getting out on the City of Alpine blog, as well as news updates. Give a lot of credit to Gio Calderon, Chris Ruggia, just doing a fantastic job. And, you know, go back to those websites every day. They continue to add additional content, resources of help. And I can't speak volumes enough about the work that is occurring behind the scenes to ensure that we get a lot of information out there for everybody, because we do know that more than anything, you know, folks want to understand where the city is going with different piece parts to this. Also, you know, what we can do to help guide people along the path with some of the stimulus money as it relates to CARES Act. The COVID info and resource page, you know, if you just type in City of Alpine /COVID-19, that'll take you right there as well. Important to note, we're also posting things like the governor's response, and as well as, you know, Judge Cano extended the order for the county this afternoon. That's been updated through April 30th. We immediately got that repurposed onto the City of Alpine website, so people could have that document, review it, be able to see that action that was taken. Also, as the mayor had described earlier, he and myself and Chief Martin have been working with Dr. Escobar, Rick Flores from the hospital, the judge, the sheriff, and the MC on local responses, as well as Becky McCutcheon from the school district and Leo Dominguez from the university, and applaud their efforts in especially the schools and how they're changing path and really working through educational opportunities for their students relative to online learning. It's never perfect out there, probably not the dry run, so to speak, that they wanted to go through, but certainly appreciate their efforts. And also our Christian school or Montessori, certainly a lot of our homeschool environment around have been already actively engaged in online learning. But, you know, our other private schools here too have really had to adjust as well. So hats off to Joyce Downing, Ginger Turner, and a host of other educators here in Alpine working to make a difference. Certainly, as the mayor noted, we are seeing impacts on local businesses, mostly in the retail, restaurants, lodging sector. You know, the hotel, motel, short-term rental, the change of course a couple weeks ago certainly has created challenges across that spectrum. I really want to say thanks to the different hoteliers in their communication back with Chief Martin and Lieutenant Fierro. They really are doing a great job at communicating who are the people coming in that are either military, law enforcement, or critical infrastructure. And those discussions are occurring multiple times throughout the day, every day, and appreciate the diligence there. Also, the Big Bend National Park closure, and we saw Texas Park close today as well. And last week, the mayor and I had sent in letters to DC asking relative to Big Bend National Park. Certainly, we knew at the federal level that the president had indicated in his statement to avoid discretionary travel, as well as looking through the governor's order. It just didn't make sense with Big Bend National Park being more of a destination, not a pass-through location. Why that would still stay open, and we certainly have seen the closure there. Beautiful park. You know, I know a lot of us like to hike down there, and it's, but we certainly understand we'll be enjoying that beauty in the future. The other thing I want to touch on is with our city employees. We continue to see, of course, our utilities and our law enforcement out in the work environment working. We do keep separation. We just don't have large work groups that would run the risk of 12 or 15 people congregating together. But we are working through critical issues in our infrastructure as we continue to build out. We've got several employees that are working from home, working modified shifts in our office setting. So think of our admin, finance, even folks like Adelina Bell, who runs environmental services, is able to work from home too, and accomplish quite a bit of training. Hats off to Lorena on our team for working back with department heads on quite a bit of training that's out there. And so really appreciate those efforts. Moving forward, certainly noted earlier, the CARES Act and the resources, the information on our website. Also hats off to Marcy Tuck and Megan Antrim for their work back in helping just create the monologue, certainly working back with Counselor Stevens as well. He's been engaged in some of the application process with folks that he's well aware of and works with. And I think that combined effort, all in an effort to help our community use the resources that are out there. FEMA, we have tapped into FEMA as well. And our group has pulled together a list at documentation so that as we go through recovery items, I mean, obviously one of our thoughts will be, can you recover resources back from a city perspective? One of the things that certainly has happened from a law enforcement perspective is, Chief and I talk quite a bit about ensuring that we have enough resource in the field as we work through shelter at home orders and things of that nature, that we have heightened visibility in the community. And so that certainly accumulates over time. All those things are quantifiable, that FEMA is targeting a 75% return for those increased expenditures due to COVID-19. So a little bit of background on what the team is doing to recapture some of those costs. Certainly from a budget perspective, some of the budget implications, we've had some questions posture up about, is the city going to take any action on property taxes? Of course, this year's, property taxes were due and paid in January. But council will look at the tax rate in this next year's, as we get into May and in June, when we start having our budget workshops, and look at the implications from the pandemic and what action council deems appropriate as we form our budget for this next year. Also sales tax, I'll show a table here on the next slide. Interesting enough, some of our retailers actually are performing very well, grocery and online retail. But we're certainly studying the impact on our local eateries, our local retail that has been closed, and local service-based businesses too. And then of course our utility, we'll talk about that after the sales tax chart. So let me kind of move forward a little bit here on the sales tax table. And just for everybody's awareness, these slides will be up on the website tomorrow morning. You'll be able to look at these in a little bit more detail. One of the things that Megan pulls together is kind of a month over month. What are we getting from a sales tax revenue? If you look down 2019, 2020, part of what she and I are looking back at is what have we been trending December, January, February, and March. December, we had a good December at 181,000. Historically had been averaging in the upper 120s. So that was certainly a good bump in December. I think a reflection of the national economy and the state economy, and there was quite a bit of spending going on in the December timeframe. Then you get to January. We were a little up from the year before. February, we were a little up at 165, over 154 from the year before. And then March, we were up again. And part of that, as Megan and I look at it, is the impact of some of what we call the hoarding spending, right? So as we talked to Trey Dutch over at Porter's, week over week, they've been at 200% to plan. So we know there's been heavy shopping there. I think there's also the impact of, a lot of folks have limited their traveling to other markets where maybe they'll go to an HEB or go to a Sprouts and procure groceries. A lot of folks are staying here and buying here as well. And then certainly the online ordering has been having an impact on us. So, these are all the factors that council will have to consider and contemplate as we navigate month over month and as we emerge from the pandemic. So just wanted to kind of make sure everybody had their eyes on what Megan and I are looking at as well. Forward on to some questions that have arisen relative to the action that Fort Stockton took, where they cut their April utility bills in half. That was certainly something that their mayor and council felt was appropriate for them. One of the things that pulled together with Megan is really an understanding, and this is something that I know we had looked at back in 2016, the last time we had taken action on our rates, but one we look at is how does Alpine compare to other similar sized cities in Texas. So all this data is readily available on the TML website. It's just a download CSV type file. And as you'll see, Alpine, if you look at this bottom number down here, on I call it our standard residential sub 5,000 gallon usage, we're at about 65.2% of what a similar size city in Alpine or in Texas would spend. And then, it varies as you go to 10,000, 50,000 or 200,000 gallon usage. So when we look at that, and then the next chart shows where our our wastewater fees are at. Similar size city in Texas, billing at the 2,000 gallon range. We just have a flat fee, $15.50. That's 49.2%. So part of one of the things that we've certainly come to appreciate in Alpine is that we do have historically had low utility rates. I think the other piece that we contemplate is we know recently we've been really focused on infrastructure. We've done some high dollar spend on equipment as well as some of the functioning at the wastewater treatment plant. And so those are all pieces that we have to think about as we move into our 5-year capital plan that council will contemplate over the summer. And we had actually been working on an update to the pricing schedule to present to council in March, and we had pulled that off of the previous agenda because we certainly knew the timing wasn't appropriate, but certainly wanted to get that out there as well. And, when we think about, kind of all these points together, the last 7 months we have been taking, additional spend in our utility department without taking on debt, which is a good thing. We're also taking action to help our citizens. We had taken that earlier this year to get current on the water bills, and we're working through right now any folks that are having trouble with their bills, communicating back with Stephanie and her team. We certainly are following from a national and state guidance that we're not going to cut anybody's utility off during a time of pandemic. And in fact, we're not going to be assessing late fees this month. We are working actively to communicate with folks who, have challenges. And so we really don't want people to fall behind if at all possible. On the gas side, we have had a warm winter, so we anticipate being roughly about 200,000 below what we budgeted from a revenues perspective. And Randy and team have already been looking at ways to reduce costs. Earlier this year, we had a couple light months of billing on our water side. We know that's tied to some zero read data, and working with Scott on assistance on that. So that's really part of what we're looking at. I'll pause on that because I don't know if anybody from council has a question relative to our utility infrastructure and billing. Oh, I think Lucy does. Megan, can you pull Lucy off mute? Hey, Megan? Okay.
I can't get her unmuted. I don't know what. There we go. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
So I know that I've been asked questions as to, I guess some of the residents are wanting to know why we can't have the utilities at half off like Fort Stockton.
So just on the water side, Councilor Escobedo, if you did a half off, you would reduce your revenue just in 1 month at 170,000.
Can you also like elaborate on I know that they were saying that a lot of them got their bills that were at a higher rate this month.
So one of the questions that has come in, and we did put out a PSA today on the sanitation rates. So the sanitation rate was negotiated with TDS back in 2012. So prior to anybody on this council being on council, and it had a annual increase associated with that. So every year in March, the rates increase, and every year, this time of year, we get the same amount of questions that come in relative to it. Most folks that are longer term residents know just kind of over history that, in March it goes up. That contract does expire in 2022, and we will certainly go out to RFP up to including looking at bringing that back in-house.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Couldn't tell whether there was another question. Okay, good. Well, with that being said, my next slide is Dr. Escobar. I'm sorry I have an older picture of you, Dr. Escobar, but you looked very sharing in that conversation that you were giving or interview you were giving. So I put that along your slide. I hope you're okay with that. Megan, are you able to pull her off of mute for us?
I am trying. Tonight it seems to be a little bit more finicky. And just so council knows, if you guys mute yourself, you can't unmute yourself. It has to be done by the host. So please leave yourself unmuted. Otherwise you may be skipped over in talking.
Dr. Escobar.
Yes, hi. All right, so I'll give some updates, and then Eric, if you're okay, I can pause for questions so that I can make sure to answer anything that's relevant to my area before we move on.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing I wanted to do is, as of last Wednesday, I became the local health authority for Brewster County. Every county's allowed to have somebody who becomes their local health authority. And we're still, it's hard to be put in a position in the middle of a pandemic because people that normally would be my supervisors on a regional and state level have their hands full. So we're clunking along, and I'm figuring out what my additional responsibilities are as we go. but there's a couple benefits to having somebody locally. I've accepted the position for the time being during this time of COVID-19 specifically. As a pediatrician, I'm not sure of the long-term value I can provide as a local health authority, since my expertise really is in children on a day-to-day basis. This is something, with COVID-19, it was something that was tasked to me, and I've taken it and run with it. But we can reevaluate my position after we finish with COVID-19. That being said, one of the benefits to that is it allows me to help with providing and disseminating information on a local city and county level, local and county and city level, outside of being a hospital employee. So with that being said, one of the things that I want to review is the visitation policy at the hospital. We're currently trying to limit visitors to the hospital. This is happening across the country and in many places around the world. There are some issues with taking care of people that may potentially have COVID, and making sure that we're minimizing the exposure to folks coming in and out of the hospital while we care for patients that may or may not have COVID. So there's some changes that are coming into play with visitation. So as of last Monday, March 30th, we have a no visitor policy that's in effect. We're trying to take the health and safety of our caregivers, our patients, our visitors, and our staff very seriously. So all patient visitation is going to be suspended, with the exception of palliative care patients. So those are patients that we admit for comfort care, end of life measures. We are making allowances on a case-by-case basis to allow some limited but allowed visitation for that. We are allowing one significant other for our OB patients, so patients that are pregnant. We're allowing one significant other. And then, of course, for pediatric patients, we need one parent or guardian to accompany them because most of them are minors. Any exceptions to our no visitor policy is going to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by our chief nursing officer. And anyone that does meet criteria for visitation will still be screened. We are screening anybody coming to the hospital for any recent travel to areas that may have COVID. We are also screening for potential fever, cough, and other symptoms of COVID, so that even if you yourself are not coming to the hospital for care and you're visiting somebody else, we still need to ensure that we take care of our visitors and our staff and potential exposure in that area as well. So all visitors will be screened prior to every visit, and a yes to any of our screening questions for symptoms such as fever and cough, and a yes to potential travel to areas of COVID-19. We have a process in place. We may need to put a mask on you. We may ask for a check-in and check-out process to ensure that we know where you are and where you have been, and other such items. So we do also ask that approved visitors that are coming to the hospital not just come in and out all day. As a rural hospital, we tend to be pretty lax on these visitation policies, and we're just having to be a little bit more stringent about it. So if we're going to have visitors visiting a patient, they need to stay for the day, or if they're going to stay overnight, then stay overnight. But coming in and out all day is going to be really difficult for us to enforce safety. Also, there are limited entry points to the hospital. So the main entry point for visitors and patients will be through the front doors of the hospital, and our employees have a set entrance point for them as well. And we are going to be giving stickers that identify all visitors that are going to be coming and going through the hospital at this time. Any questions on the visitation policy? Okay, so I'll move on. So some implications for local healthcare providers. I do want to go over a couple things that we're doing on a local level behind the scenes. There's a lot going on a day-to-day, even hour-by-hour basis to prepare our community and our medical providers. And we just want to reassure the city that we have a good handle on COVID-19. One of the things we do is every Monday morning to gear up for the week, we have a Monday morning medical community update. So all of our clinicians in our area, our physicians, our nurse practitioners, we have a phone call and conference where we go over new data that's come out, new cases that have come out, what those implications mean for us, new data on testing, turnaround testing, any potential problems that we've encountered in the past week in our local community so that we can troubleshoot and improve the processes that we have in place. We have reached out and have clinicians calling in to the call all the way up to Van Horn, Fort Stockton, out to Sanderson. We're definitely taking care of our Tri-County area, and we actually have folks that are dialing in from a little bit outside of our Tri-County area because they are part of our medical community team. So please rest assured that our community and on a larger scale is on the same page, and that we're helping each other develop a process so we can take care of all our entire community on a larger scale. In terms of other things that I wanted to put out there, we do have some specific plans that the hospital has put together. We have what's called a surge plan. So with any area that has COVID-19 cases, one of the things that happens with these cases is that you initially get a trickle of patients that may potentially be COVID-19 positive. So you have one patient and they test positive, and then they know the next week you might have a couple more and then a couple more, and it builds. It's not just an on or off, it's a slow increase. And so with that, what we worry about is we may have to have some tiered plans. So as we have more patients coming in to get evaluated, to be hospitalized, we have to have a plan to allow that surge in patient care suddenly. So we have a 5-tier plan at the hospital in terms of emergency management, and every tier in the plan has something that triggers us to go to the next level. There's processes and protocols that'll be implemented in the ER as well as on the inpatient side within the hospital. Staffing considerations, hospital operations will change based on how many patients we have to take care of and what we're seeing. So there's a tiered response as you would have in any disaster or emergency management that is in place currently. The other thing that we are doing is keeping track of cases in our Tri-County area. I would like to share some of that. I know there's been a lot of concerns in our community of, are we testing enough? And we have enough tests done under our belt that there's not as big of a concern about HIPAA. So HIPAA is patient privacy and ensuring that if we have too few tests that are done and we share how many tests we've done, it's very easy to sometimes figure out who has been tested and who those people could potentially be. So it makes it really hard to balance protecting patient privacy along with being able to be transparent to the community. I've been given authorization and agreement that as a medical community that we've done enough that we can share this data and be and not feel like we're disregarding patient privacy laws. So to date, let me pull my numbers here. So to date, we have done 32 tests in our Tri-County area, that is Tri-County. The way tests are determined if we're doing enough is actually based on how many tests we've done per 1,000 residents. So in a Tri-County area, we have 18,773 residents per our last census. So if you have 32 tests in that many people, then we're doing 1.7 tests per 1,000 people. If you look at Texas as a whole, the number of tests we've done based on the Texas population, Texas is averaging 3 tests per 1,000 people. We're doing 1.7 per 1,000 people. So we're about half the rate of Texas. Now, remember that Dallas and Houston have huge outbreaks of COVID. So of course they're going to be testing at significantly higher rates. The fact that we're testing at even 50% of what Texas's rate is pretty good considering we have 0 cases. The other thing I want to point out is El Paso, for example, is publishing their cases and their rate of testing. El Paso, let's compare them. They're not a huge outbreak area, but El Paso has done 542 tests and their population is 840,000. So if you look at their tests per 1,000 people, they've done 0.6 tests per 1,000 people. So we have tested about 3 times as many people than El Paso has. So if we disregard big outbreak areas like Dallas and Houston, we're actually doing very well with how many people we're testing. So it's just to reassure the public that we are testing. We are keeping track of who we test on a tri-county level. And we are, when we send samples off for testing, we always have a turnaround time. It takes about between 7 and 10 days to get results. So there's always a couple tests that are pending results. But obviously so far we have no cases in a tri-county area. And we do have, out of those 32 tests, 9 results are still pending. So we are working with our medical community at a tri-county level to ensure that we have numbers and we can compare those numbers to other areas within Texas to make sure that we're doing enough. We always want to do more, but I do want to reassure everybody that just because we're in Alpine doesn't mean that we're taking this lightly. And we are doing our due diligence and trying to make sure that we keep you all safe. Any questions on testing?
Just a quick reminder to people, if you do have a question for anyone or any of the additional staff that'll speak after Dr. Escobar, you can always go into chat and type the question, and then we'll make sure we get it to them before they finish presenting.
Okay, so I have a question that popped up here. It says, I was told there are 2 types of blood work that can be done to confirm if someone's positive for COVID-19. So you don't have to use up a test kit if not necessary. There's a blood work test that's developed. And if that comes back positive, then, you know, what are the implications of that? So I do want to speak to that a little bit. I'm not going to get very technical about it because it is a very technical question and answer, but there are 2 types of tests. The current test that is available widely through the US and the world is something called a PCR test. So we know what the genetic material of COVID-19, the virus, SARS-CoV-2, what its genetic material is. We have its DNA, its RNA blueprint. So what the current technology has allowed us to do is when China first published that RNA blueprint, we were able to make a test that essentially looked for that genetic blueprint when we swab someone. So the current test that we use is a swab up the nose, and we run it through a test, and that test looks to see if there's anything in that sample that matches the genetic material of the virus. And if it matches, then you have the virus. If you don't, then you don't have the virus on that swab. That swab is not perfect. If you don't do a great job swabbing, then you may not pick up the right pieces of the virus. If you don't go far back enough, all the way to the back of the nose and throat, then that's also going to be, if the technique is not great, then your result will also not be great. So there's some variation to that. The test itself is about 70% accurate. So you have a 30% chance that the result is a false negative. So you have COVID, but the test did not pick up the COVID that is in your nose. And so that's one of the downsides to the test that we have right now. So yes, that means that if you're positive, but a negative doesn't always mean a negative. It could be a false negative, and we just didn't swab you well enough, or the swab that we got from you, it just didn't pick up any material that had COVID on it. There's been a lot of reports that somebody who meets all the signs and symptoms of COVID, their initial test is positive or is negative initially, and they retest them a day later, a few days later, and the second test or the third test finally is positive. So the tests are not 100% accurate. The other type of test that's out there that recently got FDA approval is a blood test. So that one tests for antibodies. Now remember that antibodies take a while to build up. So even though you may start having symptoms of COVID now, if we checked you on day 1 of symptoms for COVID-19, you are not going to have enough antibodies in your system to be detectable on blood work. It takes days to build up antibodies. So the antibody test, the blood work test, is actually most accurate, usually at least 10 days after the start of symptoms. So there's some complications. It's not a one and done test. It's not the slam dunk answer that we're looking for. The other thing I want to point out about the antibody test is just because you have antibodies does not equal immunity. We all have antibodies against the common cold because we've been exposed to the common cold and we have developed antibodies to it. It doesn't mean we're immune. Just because we have antibodies does not mean we are immune. So those two are not the same thing. And so the fact that we have the ability to do these antibody tests now, there's going to be some phenomenal data that's going to come out in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I believe, as we figure out what these antibodies mean, at what level maybe potentially be immune. There is some data coming out that cases of mild COVID, it's not producing enough antibodies to really be considered sufficient for anything. It's the folks that end up really sick and in the hospital that are building up enough levels of antibody that might actually be worth something. So it's just too new, and we've never seen this virus before. And the fact that 3.5 months ago, we first heard of this virus and we're talking about this, 100 days out is pretty phenomenal to say the least. So stay in tune, we'll have better answers for you, but the tests are not, like I said, it's still a positive and a negative doesn't always mean negative. So we're having to be very careful with testing. Just testing everybody is not also the answer. Because again, a negative test doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have COVID. It just may mean that the test did not pick up COVID in you. So we have to be careful with how we view these tests. That's not the key here. So we're gonna need a little bit more time and a little bit more information. But these tests may in the future have some really good potential to garner some more information for decision making, but we're not there yet. Any other questions? 7 to 10 days seems like a long time for results. Can that be speeded up? And what controls are there on the patient during that waiting period? So for mild to moderate symptoms of patients, when patients are tested for COVID, they are asked to self-quarantine because there may be a potential that they have COVID. That's what they're being tested. So yes, 7 to 10 days turnaround time is a long time, and no one is happy with that length of time period for results. Imagine patients that are sick enough to be hospitalized and we're having to wait 7 to 10 days for results, and they're here in the hospital, we're using up masks and gloves and everything and not knowing if they have COVID or not. So I agree, the fact that the tests are not 100% accurate, and on top of that, we have a long turnaround time for results, it's not great. So I know a lot of people are focusing in on the tests, but that's a very minor part of the problem of COVID, at least on the medical side. What else? Any other questions on testing? And
so Dr. Escobar, Rick Stevens here. Thanks very much for what you're doing, the leadership you're providing. There's there's been some discussions at the national level that there are some quicker tests out there to be able to speed up the process that can be processed in place. Can you give us some perspective about that for Alpine?
Yes, so even if the tests end up not being 100% accurate, there are some what we call point of care tests. So if you've ever gotten the flu swab in clinic or a strep throat swab, you get swabbed in the clinic, you wait 5 or 10 minutes and you get a result right then and there. But just like those tests, the test is not always 100% accurate. So it will help the turnaround time, shortening that 7 to 10 days to 5 to 15 minutes in the clinic will help identify positive cases, but we won't be able to utilize those tests to determine, let's say if you say your test shows that you don't have COVID, you're testing negative for COVID,
Right.
That may not give you a passport to go out into the community and not socially distance. you know, a negative is going to give some false reassurance to a certain extent. So some people are kind of utilizing that as maybe that could be our passport out of social distancing. And we really have to be careful about thinking about it like that. But I agree, it'll at least help identify positive cases much more quickly. And those 5 to 15 minute point of care tests are getting approved by the FDA and getting distributed and manufactured. So the next couple of weeks, we'll start seeing them making their way into clinics. And we have clinics here locally in the Tri-County area that have asked and ordered these tests. So we're not a priority location. You know, most of these tests are first going to go to the DOD always, and then the next is always, you know, the West Coast and New York and New Orleans and all those high case areas. But eventually, they will make our way to us.
Yeah, thanks very much. And with the 70-30 on the current test, anything to speed up that process will be helpful. Just, we got to wait to get in line to get ours. Thanks.
Yes. All right, and then the last thing I just wanted to address quickly was the shelter in place or shelter at home and what it means for the hospital. All we're doing with this shelter in place orders is buying time. We have scientists, we have folks that are working around the clock to develop medicines, develop vaccines, to find a way to help with the progression of COVID-19 and the fact that we have so many people becoming very severely ill, taking up a lot of medical resources, and then obviously our fatality rate as well. And so what we need to do is slow the spread down and buy the right people the time to get these pharmaceutical interventions in place. And that's what we're doing with the social distancing, the shelter in place, the shelter at home. We're buying people that are way smarter than us time. And there's no other way that we could do that other than to slow the spread by making some sacrifices. And so we're seeing that. If any of you have found websites that project the trajectory of cases and things like that, there are a lot of good epidemiologists that have been tracking cases day by day on a national level as well as a state level. And you can see that the trajectory of cases is slowing down as we go further into our social distancing measures. So I do think it's really important for us to continue doing that. I know it's getting old already, but we have weeks to go before we even talk about how to start kind of coming out of it. And really the long-term time frame that we're looking at to really get out of the meat of COVID-19, we're looking at 6 months on the short end and honestly close more like a year on the long end, average end, before we have a vaccine, before we start having some idea of how to start going back to some semblance of normal. The economists have predicted that our economy is not going to return anywhere closer to a normal level until 2023. It's going to take years to recover from the last few months. So it's hard and it's a long road. And I don't want people to get complacent because we're not out of it yet. And the month of April specifically is going to be key. Like I said, our curves across the country are starting to flatten. We're slowing the spread and we need to keep doing what we're doing. This month is really going to be critical to see if we can really, really slow it down.
Dr. Escobar?
Yes.
Yes, I have just a quick question for you, just to pick your brain. What is your expert opinion regarding the use of homemade face masks out in public? It seems that more and more we're seeing people with using them, which I think is great, but there are the type that they're doing at home. They're making them at home.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So the short answer is I like them a lot. There's a lot of data comparing cloth masks to medical masks. And of course, none of the cloth masks are going to stand up to any comparison to medical masks. So we will likely never see them in the hospital until we run out of any and all other supplies. However, for local folks that are going to the grocery store, to the gas station, I think any layer of protection to keep your droplets in your mouth or somebody else's droplets from coming in contact with you and your face is going to be important. And we're at a point, we have over 1 million cases worldwide. Our death rate is still shooting up way faster than we would ever want. And so we're at the point where every little bit helps. I went to the grocery store on Sunday and I wore a mask to the grocery store. So a cloth mask. I think it's really important for us to do everything we can. And I think that even if the data's not there, even a little, and there's some data starting to come out, but that comparing cloth masks to no mask, because that's really the comparison that we want to see. And it is providing, depending on what the material is made out of, between a 15% protection up to a 50% protection. So 1550. So I do think there is a layer of protection. It's not perfect, but we're not looking for perfect, and we don't expect perfect.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Escobar, for being here and answering questions. And we appreciate your commitment to the community, to the county, and to healthcare professionals all over the place. So thank you.
Yeah. Before we sign off, City Manager, I just want to compliment Dr. Edgar for the fantastic job she's doing. I know we don't have an expert in that field, but she took the ball and ran with it. And there was a comment made, well, she's not the expert. Well, you know what? You need to step up to the plate then and find a subject matter expert. But in the meantime, Dr. Edgar has taken the ball, and she has done a fantastic job in reading all the publication, keeping us abreast of everything that's going on. So with that, I want to personally applaud you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. All right, moving forward, Megan, we'll need to pull Jennifer off mute. I wanted to let Jennifer talk about our animal health.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. So I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit about what we're doing here at the shelter. As of the 1st, we did lock our front door here just to limit the amount of people that are coming in and out. So if somebody does come with the shelter, they call, they need to call the number on the door, and we do let them. We just kind of want to limit traffic up here right now and try and keep as minimal amount of people through here as possible at once. We are still doing adoptions. We are still taking in strays. We did stop taking in animals and surrenders. So that has kind of helped us a little bit decrease our numbers while we're all dealing with this. In long short here for the hours of the animal shelter, we are still 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, and we close from 1 to 2 for lunch. It's just appointment only. We've already had really good hygiene practices up here, so we're still doing that. We are doing some extra things to kind of keep the shelter a little bit better maintained, just wiping down door handles more frequently. We've already had hand sanitizer stations in every single room and on our way and now up our lobby. So we are encouraging people to use those. Our employees are strongly encouraged to wash their hands as often as possible and also use our hand sanitizer station as needed. We haven't really seen a huge decrease in volunteers, our regular volunteers. They are still coming, the ones that are helping us clean in the mornings, which has been really great. And we also have a couple of dedicated people that come to walk that are still coming and getting those dogs walking them. So our volunteers have been awesome. We do have the Alpine Humane Society helping us get a list of fosters together, which in turn will be future volunteers in case we do need to put animals into foster homes if we had to shut our doors. At this time, we're not doing that. We just are compiling a list of fosters. trying to see what else I have on the agenda here for what we're doing. We do still offer our cremation services here at the shelter. I did make sure and put a post about that on our Facebook page. So I want to make sure that make sure people know that we're still offering all of our services here at the shelter. I do want to reiterate that I am watching, you know, the Humane Society sites and the animal ASBC sites, and still have not seen anything regarding transmission from pets to humans. So I want to reiterate that is still no evidence. As far as I know, we can ask Ms. Escobar about that, but animal to human is still a non-issue. But I am keeping a close eye on that for our shelters, like, and the public. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Hey, Jennifer, this is Rick Stevens. Thanks for all that you're doing. Relative to the point about transmission, I did see an article in the last 12 hours or so that was concerned about cats. And so it might be worthwhile for you and ECTA to get together to kind of put that to rest, or at least bring everyone up to speed on that.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested if you could send me to that so I can read that over.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jennifer, this is the mayor. Thank you for the fantastic job you guys do out there. I had talked to Dr. Mary Dotson, and she said she had been given immunization to pets on the coronavirus. It's a different strain, but they do get it. So you might want to talk to her also on that.
Yeah, so a lot of times the first puppy shots that dogs get do have a coronavirus vaccine in it. It's the December with coronavirus in it. I don't know a whole lot about that. Dotson, of course, would know more information about that. I'll ask her and see if she's doing more of that vaccine rather than just the first couple of puppy shots. I'll have to check into that, but thank you for that.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you. And thank you for your volunteers.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Any more questions for Jennifer?
No.
All right, let's move forward to Mr. Scott Perry. Megan, if you can take Scott off mute, he'll give us an update on our utilities and our airport.
I'm not sure who he's logged in as.
I saw him in there earlier.
He's utility iPhone.
I know, but it just has video. It doesn't have voice. Scott, if you can hear, can you text me what you're logged in for audio?
I see him under utilities iPhone.
Yes, but it's just video. There's no audio.
Ah,
It's not the Jessica one, is it? Jessica Washington?
I see his hands moving and his mouth moving, but no Scott sound. He's typing.
I unmuted Jessica. I'm not sure if that's you, Scott.
Oh, someone's pounding on the glass. Oh.
All right. Why don't we do this? Why don't we jump forward Why don't we jump forward to Chris Ruggia? And then Scott, what we'll have Scott do is when we get to the point with Scott, let's have him go down to your office, Chief, because I can see he's probably 20 feet away from you. And then you two guys can round out.
Okay,
So Chris, why don't you go ahead next?
All right, thank you. Hello, Council. I have been spending a lot of time working with our hoteliers in the wake of the closure orders by the council and by the county. I've been emailing, doing a lot of group emails with them. Each time there's a extension of the judge's orders or a meeting announced, I send them out an email, and I've been fielding their responses, answering the questions as I can, as I have answers for them. And when I don't have answers, I have been forwarding those along to Eric and the chief at APD. And I have also been encouraging them to communicate directly with you as their council representatives so that you can also get a firsthand idea of what their feelings and responses are. As their responses built up, Eric scheduled a Q&A Zoom call with all of the hoteliers, and as many who came, quite a few of them participated, and that call is available on the city's website. Geo has posted that. So Eric has a link in his slide there. It's also on the news page of the city's website if you want to scroll down and look at that. What I'm hearing from the hoteliers is, well, for one thing, the things that we've been able to offer them as a slight relief to their financial distress is mainly in the area of deferring payments. If they make a written request, we can defer their payment of hotel taxes and also utilities. And of course, that's offered to any utilities account that the city has. Now, the hoteliers have been asking for more than that. They've been asking for more help directly from the city. They've asked about waiving the hotel tax, the city's portion of the hotel tax for some or all of the remainder of the year. There've also been requests for outright forgiveness of a portion of their utility bills, and also property tax relief, which Eric mentioned earlier in the meeting. So I'm just passing along. These are things that have been asked for. How you all want to handle those requests, what's legal, what's realistic, is really for you all to weigh. And moving on to the impacts of the closures, of course, the hospitality industry around the country is hurting very badly. Our hotels in particular are hurting worse than most because they've been required to close more than a lot of other places. Those other places don't have our particular situation. Now, before your order and the county's order closed our hotels for the most part, do want to note that some anecdotal evidence had indicated that our hotels were already losing up to 90% of their future bookings as a result of the governor's initial order that was closing the restaurants and suggesting that people not travel. And then, of course, with the park closures last week and then the state parks today, that reduces that traffic even more. So there was when you all passed your emergency ordinance at your previous meeting. In the wake of that, there was some confusion as we had to work out with the hotels the Homeland Security's definition of an essential critical infrastructure worker, and those folks were not, included explicitly in the ordinance that you passed. So The APD have been working, as Eric said, on a daily basis with hotels to identify who those critical workers are and make sure that they have a place to stay. And also in some emergency cases, the chief has been signing off on some one-night stays for people in dire straits. So they've been working on those exceptions as well. Not in that context, some of our hotels are doing, very few of them, but are doing okay. Quarter Circle 7 has a strong relationship with the National Guard. They've been working with them for quite some time. They're taking a lower rate than they normally would, but they do have occupancy there. The Travel Lodge has their account with the railroad. And of course, after your emergency ordinance was passed, we realized that Homeland Security had identified those railroad workers as essential. So those folks are still there. One other thing I wanted to note about the impact on our hotels is not just financial. Some of them I've heard really heartfelt distress at having to turn people away, especially as we were trying to figure out the processes of working with the police department to get some of those emergency exemptions. And so they were really suffering, feeling like, their role to offer hospitality to the weary traveler. And so it has not been an easy time for any of our hoteliers. Moving on to the hotel tax in general. My guess is that our collections this year, well, obviously they'll be low. They may be, we're just hitting the halfway point of our fiscal year. And so looking forward, we might be as low as a 50% collection rate. I doubt we'll be quite that low, but it's bound to be dramatically reduced. So one of the things I've talked to Eric about doing is I'm going to work back with the grants, the events and organizations who've received hotel grants from the council and find out which of those events have been canceled, which of those projects are going forward, and what can we do to reduce those expenditures as well as expenditures on the general promotion side. Eric has indicated to me we do have a fund balance from previous years, so the minimum that we need to get done, the money will be there, and we will just work going forward on making accurate projections and plans. In the immediate term, what I'm seeing with a lot of the magazines that we advertise with, some of them, like the Southwest Air magazine, that issue that we just bought an ad in has been canceled outright. And some others, the Houston Astros program and Texas Music magazine, those are indefinitely postponed, if not canceled. The Texas Music will print, we just don't know the date. Some of those ads we'll save that money and be able to put it into something else. On social media, my other activities there, at the start of this outbreak, all our messages related to visitation were completely stopped or removed. We stopped running the Visit Alpine social media ads. And so the messaging that we're putting out right now, at least half of it is actually for the locals. We're putting out resources and local art, local music, and things like that to try and share with folks as they're staying home. And then in the afternoons, I've been posting some virtual travel hashtag photos for people who want to come out here and giving them some nice things to look at and keeping Alpine in mind while making sure it's clear that they shouldn't visit just now. Eric and I have begun talking about how to approach the conclusion of the crisis. We'll be looking at developing some plans for campaigns with a flexible start date. We're looking ahead at what kinds of events might be realistic. All those plans are tentative, as we all know. We have no idea exact timing when, and in terms of future risks, that kicks in there. What we have to figure out flexible approaches to this so that we know how we can gradually reopen our hospitality industry, knowing that there will be additional waves of the virus. And if we're successful in avoiding an outbreak here, which who knows if we will be, then we'll have a population that has no antibodies and no even partial immunity to those additional waves. So we have to look really closely at those situations as we're making our plans for how to gradually invite visitors back to our wonderful place to visit. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer if I can.
Hey, Chris, this is Rick. I guess the comment, I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate the leadership you are providing, particularly the interface with the hoteliers. I've had some discussions with a number of them in Ward 5 by phone and got some good feedback, answered some questions. It's very clear that you and Eric are engaged with them. So keep up that work. My put back to them has been, it will be difficult to make any assessments about actions to take at this point until we get a better handle on how we come back out of the coronavirus, kind of lockdown, for lack of a better term, and shelter in place. But by and large, people are fairly responsive, and the ones that I have talked to, one of the questions I've asked them is whether they've applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, and they all have. So thanks for the work you're doing in there as well, because that helps get some dollars out. I know on other not-for-profit and organizations I'm involved with, some of the Paycheck Protection Programs were approved as of today. So money is start flowing if people can get those in and get their money back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Any other questions for Chris?
No, thanks a lot, Chris. Great job.
Thanks very much.
All right, Mr. Perry. Hey, Megan, let's take Chief Martin off, and he's got Mr. Perry there, and we'll have Mr. Perry and then Mr. Martin.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're probably gonna have to get a little closer to the mic, Scott.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulties, so I think we got it ironed out now. I'll try to make it short. I'll just kind of brief everybody on where we're at. Got a lot of things going on. Most of our workload we're trying to do is very minimal public contact, in that we're trying to handle a lot of the housekeeping things we're behind on, executing some of the tasks that don't require a whole lot of public contact. Also trying to make sure the guys are equipped properly. We took steps about a month ago and kind of were ahead of the curve and tried to order as much sanitizer, gloves, and things like that. So we're in pretty good shape on that, and have distributed it to the other departments that need a little bit of help in that area. Other than that, we've been doing a lot of analysis on our SCADA system. We got a new gentleman on board who's been here about a month now, who's saved us a lot of time and money and heartache with some of our electrical issues. And while we're doing that, we've kind of been going around and doing a vulnerability assessment on the city municipal owned airport, rather, as well as all of the water and wastewater utilities. Trying to basically make sure we're prepared to keep minimal basic functions running under the absolute worst of conditions. And anyway, we came out pretty decent on it, and we're making some concessions and plans right now to move forward and try to beef everything up as much as possible. So it's something we've been spending a lot of time on. We also took delivery of our new jet vac truck today. The water and wastewater crew's been out training on it all day. They'll also spend an additional day tomorrow with the individuals who delivered it to supply all the training to us. So really excited to have it here. We've seen a big increase in paper goods, paper towels, things like that coming down the wastewater collection system. That translates to a lot of extra treatment, time, and money, a lot of heartache inevitably, because it's very hard on our equipment. So we're excited to have it. The guys are training on it, and once we get it on the street next week, we'll be working on a pretty comprehensive plan to basically clean the entire distribution and collection system. So you'll see that truck around quite a bit, making a lot of racket, but hopefully we'll get some good results out of it, and life will be a little easier for our wastewater treatment. Other than that, we've also been spending a lot of time at the wastewater treatment plant doing an analysis on the electrical system. We found a lot of inadequacies. So Shane, myself, Johnny Marquez, and the wastewater guys pretty much we've just been picking that system apart, and piece by piece, we're refurbishing it and replacing it. And most of that work's being done in-house by our staff under Shane's supervision. So been able to save a little bit of money there, and the guys are getting a little more education than they used to in the job here. So other than that, it's business as usual. You know, we'll be reading the meters for gas and water as normal. On our end, logistically and operationally, you all won't see any change. Hopefully, we'll actually maybe be a little more productive on some of the jobs in-house stuff we fell behind on. So anybody have any questions or comments?
I got a comment, Scott.
Yes, sir.
I was over at the waste disposal plant the other day,
Uh-huh.
and I was talking to Mike. Was he having any issues with all these disposable sanitary, how would you call them?
Yeah, like the handy wipes and
Handy
things
wipes.
like that. Yeah.
Thank
yeah.
you. Because I had called down to proceed on a question with one of my buddies there, and he was saying that that it was clogging up their system.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that's why I went to check on to ask him to see they're having that issue. He said, no, not really. But
Yeah.
I think we need to get ahead of it, and probably we'll have to publish something on the city website
Sure, sure.
that those things are not to be disposed down the toilet, because it'll
Yeah.
cause some issues.
Agreed. I have a kind of a brief narrative I prepared that I'm going to be handing over to the city manager, and if he approves it, we'll get something out on that. Yeah, we haven't had a lot of problems at the plant yet, but we're having a lot of problems in the collection system. What's happening is the junctions and drop manholes downstream from some of the facilities that historically use these kind of items that's where we're having the problems right now. But this truck also is a sewer jet machine, so it's literally 11 times more powerful than the one the city previously was using. So we're hoping with the cutter tips and things we have on there, it'll basically just grind these paper and particles and things up into basically nothing. So
Very good.
we're hoping to start at the far end of it on the northeast side of town, working in a quad manner and working our way straight to the middle. So we'll keep you updated and take pictures as we go along with it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
So Scott, the bottom line is if you can eat it, it goes down the drain. If not, it goes in the trash.
That's a very good way to look at it. Yes, sir. Unfortunately, though, we get toy trains and all kinds of other things that we find. I even found a school desk down in the manhole, so you never know what you're going to find.
Hey, Scott, one of the questions that popped up on chat is, are the workers required to wear masks when they are out and around town working?
To date, we've supplied them with mask, gloves, and all the precautionary measures we can possibly drum up to minimize everyone's exposure. Right at this point, it's been left up to the employees' autonomy to decide what their comfort level is, but they have been given all of the PPE to make that decision. We haven't really had a lot of contact with individuals. I can tell you that most of the employees are wearing it when they come in contact with the public. I've noticed they're gloving up most of the time, but not wearing masks around other city staff. So, but there hasn't been a mandate to date, no, sir.
You know what? That's something we could consider maybe making a run at for the next 2 weeks.
Sure.
Is just, whenever you're contact with people, wear the mask. And especially with what ACTA was saying on the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks being so important.
Sure.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, and Eric, there's a number of business leaders I've spoken with, which are in different places around the country that have their business operations in place, particularly in the aircraft maintenance business. And one of the things they're doing, in addition to running 7 days a week so they can spread their crew out, they're doing a positive every morning ask questions with employees. Are you okay? Are you exhibiting any symptoms? Or are any of your family members exhibiting any concern? Do they have colds? It's just a way to highlight and make sure our city staff stays safe.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's an excellent suggestion. And to answer the question on the mask, the main reason we really hadn't put it in place to date to mask up on every interaction was because that's the thing we're the lowest on. We literally have about a quarter of the amount of masks. We do all the other stuff, but we'll certainly go ahead and take that into consideration anytime we go to any residence or have to do any customer contact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just another piece of data, you might take a look, Eric, and ask ECTA to take a look as well. There is a study done by Michigan State University for those who are using the N95 masks. If they get baked at, the 158 degrees, they're good for another round. So that might be helpful.
Yeah, and we have found a supplier, person I knew from 30 years ago, based in Iceland, who is providing a lot of supplies for New York, state of New York right now. I just happen to be old friends of mine, and Megan's working on an order with them right now. The challenge I think that a lot of communities and hospitals are having is just the ability to get enough supplies to effectively use PPE in every case they need to. So we're placing a bigger order for that right now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of woodworkers in Alpine, and we tend to use N95 masks long before this came around. So you might want to put a call out to all the woodworkers and get your mask over to the hospital.
Yes.
And I wanted to add on there also, in regards to the airport, we spent quite a bit of time out there to figure out how many, what the KW requirements would be for generator power in the event there was a sustained electrical blackout out there where the runway lighting and its other essential functions were down for any period of time. And I've got a lot of information together for Eric, and I'm going to make a presentation to him later this week. And hopefully we can get you some good information on that too. We're just trying to hem up some loose ends. We're finding that, and as we discover them, we're trying to put together a mitigation plan and get them taken care of. Other than that, it's business as usual.
And Scott, on that, I've got a 12 kW propane generator if it's needed as a backup. Just that's another resource you can call on.
I've got some property in Jeff Davis County. Can I use it? No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much. Because that's actually enough kW to light that facility, believe it or not.
Okay.
I wouldn't have thought it, but so I'll definitely put it on our black book of information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Scott?
Nope.
All right, Chief. You get a round out. You're like our cleanup hitter today.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay. One of the first things that I did when the coronavirus took effect is I got with all my officers and got the word out to them that, we can't help anyone if we can't protect ourselves. And that was very important to me. So one of the first things I did was put out on my Facebook page to encourage everyone to call us and we'll come to you rather than you come to the station. And it's worked fairly well. The hand sanitizers and gloves, we've done real good with the gloves. Hand sanitizer is a little hard to get. We do have some mask and some disinfectant on order and back order and ordered again. So hopefully we'll be getting some. Fortunately, the sheriff's office has come across some disinfectant and shared with us. So we do have 3 gallons of disinfectant to keep our cars clean, and also for the officers to use it on their boots or whatever may have gotten infected. I've asked the officers to be mindful when they get home and get off duty to take their uniforms off, drop them in the washer, go take a shower before you're going around your family. Just think about little things like that. I have asked my employees that if they travel outside of the area to let me know, and depending on what area they travel to may depend upon if we put you in quarantine. I have had one employee under quarantine. He is since out of quarantine, and do currently have another employee that has traveled to an infected area on an emergency, and he is now currently in quarantine. So that's something that we're trying to be careful. If one of us gets infected, we're kind of a small agency here. It'll probably affect all of us, and then we're no good to anybody. on the relationship with the hotelers, the motelers, and short-term rentals. We've worked very close. I tell you, I got to give Trey with Porter's a thumbs up. He's been great to work with. We've actually implemented some things at both Porters to limit the amount of customers that go into the store. We've also done the same thing at Tractor Supply, the Dollar General, and the Family Dollar. And all of those businesses are working with us, wiping the carts down. They're like us. They have a hard time getting supplies to do the same thing. One of them actually told me they've gone to soap and water, to wipe their carts down before they put them out for the public to use. Motels, the guys at the motels, Lieutenant Fierro is helping me with the motels, and we're keeping track of who's coming into the city, where they're coming from, how long they're going to be here, and the purpose of them coming into the city. I have had to turn some away that was not essential. They do have documentation, the essential people coming here to do work in our city to keep us going. For example, the trash trucks. They had an employee get injured, and they had to send two people to replace him because he also was their mechanic. So since then, I believe they're both gone back. And for the most part, everyone seems to be using the social distancing. We do have little areas from time to time that we have to tell people, no more than 10 to a group and 6 foot apart. That's very vital. On the golf course, we went out and visited with them. We've implemented some things out there. One of the things we implemented was if you live in the same household and you go to the golf course and play golf, then you can both be in the golf cart together. If you live in separate households, then the golf course is implemented, you have to rent 2 golf carts. The bar area at the golf course is closed along with the patio. They are only allowing 1 person at a time into their pro shop to purchase whatever they need to purchase. And they did post signs stating all this, and they now are closing the golf course by 9 p.m. And we are driving by regularly checking on the social distancing, and also at 9, be sure everyone is out of the golf course property, other than the essential workers. They're still allowed. Yes. I thought someone had a question. The workers are still allowed to maintain the sprinklers and do whatever work needs to be done at the golf course. They do disinfect their golf carts once they're returned. They disinfect everything on the golf cart. What we implemented out there just today, just a little while ago, is we're restricting the golf course to Brewster County residents only. We found that we had some golfers coming in from out of the county from an affected area. So we have now visited with them at the golf course, and they've implemented the golf course is only open to Brewster County residents. The curfew, I tell you, the curfew has been a big help. It's really allowed me to move some officers around and beef up my day shift and my evening shift where most of the people are out in public. And night shift, they're still working, but I've had to move some officers around that especially on the weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is our busy times during the days, especially Saturday. And it's really allowed me to move some people around where they can be utilized a lot better. And crime's gone down. I don't know if that's credited to the curfew being enacted, but our crime has gone down. And I tell you, on my part, as far as the public, I've had nothing but positive feedback. And I tell you, our hotelers, motelers, Airbnbs, we did have some issues with them in the beginning, but I think they've got the word now that they're not to rent from anyone coming into Alpine. And I think that's all I had. If there's any questions?
I just got a comment. You've been out there and you've been very proactive. You know, I see all over Alpine, which is fantastic. And also on Gallego Street, I've noticed on 2 separate occasions, it looks like Holland Street before the curfew. There's some super heavy traffic out there. And I'm just wondering if people are using Gallego because it's, you know, kind of hidden in the back as a means to get around. But I said, you know, I was sitting there trimming some trees and I kept watching just vehicle after vehicle going through there. And I talked to the city manager about that today. So I don't know if it's, you know, some of them were the same vehicles, let me put it this way. So they're out just cruising around, you know, nothing to do. So, you know, maybe you might have a policeman out there, stationed out there. Maybe they'll deter them and make them to stay home instead of just driving around needlessly.
You know, that is true, and we can monitor that. If I would hope that those people are from the same households. You know, I know my wife gets stir crazy, and and I try to calm her down. We're not supposed to leave the house, but I might get in the car, drive around the block, and go right back home. So, you know, keep it to minimal, people. That's, you know, we got to have everyone's help to make this work.
Right.
That's why we all now we know why dogs get excited when it comes time for a walk.
Exactly. You know, and that's one thing I will say is there's a lot of walkers walking their dogs, a lot of people exercising. I know Jennifer's been a little busier on her end with the amount of dogs that have been out, and they didn't really see eye to eye. The dogs didn't see eye to eye. So that has been, I know on her part, that's probably a rise in her department.
Hey, Chief, one of the questions that we had come in is how many times are officers patrolling to the hotel and motel areas each day or evening? So if you think about east side, west side.
I've implemented that I wanted every officer to go through each motel 1 to 2 times per shift. I've got a lot of things I've asked them to do for me, to go by the grocery stores, walk the aisles, Tractor Supply, all the businesses. I want them to be seen out there. I think that people, when they see us out there and walking around the stores and visiting with them, and they have questions, and, you know, we're there to be seen, and we're trying to be everywhere. But it can be hard with a small staff, but we are trying to get to all the motels, all the stores where most of the consumers are going.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other additional questions for Chief?
Nope. Just great job, Chief.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, that comes to the end of our department head discussions. I think Chief ended on a great note. There are a lot of people out hiking and walking around Alpine, and taking some nice pictures as well. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for all your hard work and diligence. And I hope, I know this is a much longer city staff and city manager report today, but I certainly hope it's been worthwhile for all of you.
Right. It's been very positive, City Manager. Okay, let's move on to public hearings. Public hearings to obtain citizens' views and comments on ordinance 2020-03-01, amending the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 26, Article 2, Civic Center, providing repealing and severability clauses, provided a Texas Open Meeting Act clause, and provide an effective date. Any comments? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Public hearing obtaining citizens' views and comments on ordinance 2020-03-04, an ordinance for the placement of no parking signs inside the Old Town Square parking lot that is currently designated to no parking. Any comments on that? None?
None, Mayor.
Okay, let's go over to the consent agenda. Minutes, financial reports, department written reports, and board appointments. Notice to the public, the following items are of routine administrative nature. The council has been furnished with background and support material on each item, and or it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by the council member, in which event the item or items will immediately be withdrawn for individual consideration in its normal sequence after the items not requiring separate discussion have been acted upon. The remaining items will be adopted by one vote. City Manager.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, we have 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first one is item A, approval of minutes from City Council meeting on March 17th, 2020. Item B is approval of minutes from emergency City Council meeting on March 20th, 2020. And C, approval of minutes from special City Council meeting on March 25th, 2020.
So, Mr. Mayor, Rick Stevens here. I propose we approve items A and B, but withdraw item C to take care of 2 clerical issues.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we got several seconds. Ramon. Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and act on it. All those in favor of approving the items, raise your right hand where I can see them. Okay, very good. Y'all are waving. Any nays on this? See none, it passes unanimously. Thank y'all very much. Let's move over to the information and discussion items. And I'll turn that over to Councilman Stevens.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, in light of the other items that we have, I propose that we table the dialogue on panhandling this evening, and I'll put it on a future City Council agenda.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Okay, let's move on to item 2. Councilman Escobedo.
Mayor, I make a motion to discuss the emergency fire lanes on 5th Street and Gallego Avenue in front of Our Lady of Peace Catholic Church.
Okay. Is there a second?
Well, this is not a motion, so.
It's not, I'm sorry, it's not a motion, just a discussion. I'm
Information
sorry.
discussion. Talk about it, Lucy.
Anybody want to discuss it?
Actually, I have Chief Martin, if he can give y'all an update on that.
Okay, Chief
And
Martin.
that's it.
I am submitting a letter to City Council recommending at the Catholic Church on 5th in Gallego to designate the south front part of the church on the south side of Gallego a designated fire lane. I think it was, I don't remember what was in the letter, 50 feet, I believe. I'm sorry?
Yes.
It's 50 feet, yes.
Okay. And the fire lane will extend around the corner going south on 5th Street for, I believe it was 30 feet. All that area that would be designated fire lane. On the north side of Gallego, where there are currently some handicap parking areas, I would like to designate all of those parking areas for handicap, but also on the south side of the handicap parking areas, and I actually sent some pictures of this, with a fire line. That way there, between the 2 fire lines, there's no parking at all.
Mm-hmm.
To the west of the fire lane, there is an additional handicap parking area on the south side on Gallego. City Manager, do we have those photos that you
Yes.
maybe put up?
Yes, sir. Chief, they were in the packet.
Okay.
People.
And I
have
believe
had a
that
chance to
would
review.
designate approximately 14 handicap parking spaces. In the fire lane in front of the church, it would be perfectly fine if someone pulled up there and got an elder out of a vehicle and took them into the church, but don't leave the vehicle unattended in the fire lane. Go ahead and park that vehicle. And that's what I'm proposing. Are there any questions?
No.
Anybody?
I guess this is Rick. The only question I would have, I presume, and I know Father Bedrow's been in the middle of all this, that
Yes, sir.
that's the right number of spaces from a handicap standpoint. 14 is about right, Chief.
I did not have get to visit with him, but I did increase the number of handicap parking spaces. So there are additional total. I think currently, there was 9, a total of 9, and I've increased it to 14.
Okay, well, that works. That's close. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion?
Perfect. Well, we'll queue that up for the next council meeting to do a first reading on that ordinance.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Lucy, are you finished?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from, and if applicable, action items limited to 10 per meeting after being called upon by the mayor or mayor pro tem. Citizens are required to state their name and the ward in which they reside. Priority will be given to citizens of Alpine and those who own business or property in the city. Individuals who do not live in or own business or property in the city limits of Alpine will be allowed to speak if there's time available. And City Manager.
Honorable Mayor, can we go back to item C from the consent agenda that Councilor Stevens pulled out to correct 2 clerical errors?
Yes, sir.
So I'll just kind of walk through it, and let me get back to my page here because I got it all digitally. These are 2 minor issues on the minutes from the 25th of March, Cynthia. They have to do with item number 2 under the action items. It lists the motion having passed unanimously, but the vote was 5-1. So we probably want to make that 5-0, or fix that number there.
Yeah, because we
Got that one? Good. Okay, and the second one, Cynthia, is item number 3. The motion was proposed and seconded, but there was no vote. So I think it just needs to reflect the vote. I recall that vote was 5-0, but I just think the minutes need to properly reflect that. And with that, additions and edits, I would propose that City Council approve the minutes from the March 25th special City Council meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is made and second. Any discussion? Maria?
No.
Okay, I saw you queuing in. Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Council, item number 1 on our action items is to discuss, consider, and take appropriate action on the second and final reading of Ordinance 2020-03-01, amending the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 26, Article 2, Civic Center, providing repealing and severability clauses, providing a Texas Open Meeting Act clause, and providing an effective date. Just as a quick reminder from our last meeting, this is a second reading so that we update this ordinance so that it pulls the actual rate structure out of the ordinance, and it just sets the ordinance on the use of the Civic Center as is, and then allows council to adjust the rate by resolution every year, which typically we'll do during the budget cycle.
Okay.
So,
Entertaining
Mr. Mayor,
motion.
I
Yes, sir.
propose that we approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2020-03-01, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 26, regarding the Civic Center as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's made and second. Any discussion? Yes, sir, Ramon. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. Then go ahead and vote on it. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, item 2 is to discuss, consider, and take appropriate action on second and final reading of ordinance 2020-03-04, an ordinance for the placement of a no parking sign inside the Old Town Square parking lot that is currently designated no parking. We had the public hearing today, as well as the first reading at our last city council meeting.
Okay,
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that we approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2020-03-02, the ordinance regarding the placement of no parking signs inside the Old Town Square parking lot that's currently designated no parking, so that people no longer park there.
thank you very much. Is there
I'll
a second?
that.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Overdue. City manager.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, item 3 is to discuss, consider, and take appropriate action on the first reading of ordinance 2020-04-01, an ordinance of the City of Alpine, Texas, amending the Alpine Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing a severability clause, providing a penalty not to exceed $500, providing an effective date. This ordinance would update our permit fees, specifically on the building side for commercial and residential building. We've not had any sort of change or action on the fees since 2005. Our building official, David Hale, is on the phone if there's any questions as well.
Okay,
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that council approve the first reading of ordinance 2020-04-01, amending the Alpine Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, motion's been made and second. Any discussion now?
Yes, sir. I do have a couple questions. And David, hopefully you're on the phone. I know you can answer this because you've got all the smarts on this. I noticed under one element, there needs to be a contract for commercial buildings. And I presume that if someone owns a commercial building and they are being the general contractor themselves, that they will be able to pull together all of the cost estimates as part of that, as opposed to necessitating them getting a general contractor. Did I read that correctly?
Okay, David?
He doesn't have audio. That's what the message says.
So my view,
Yes,
Eric.
he said, hey, Rick, he said that is correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. Good. Okay, that's all the discussion I have.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I am wondering, I know that I have talked to some of the contractors and they're wondering as to why they weren't invited to like an open session to discuss the fees. Like I know they were talking about, or they told me like on the permits to have a flat fee on that. And especially right now with everything that's going on with the economy, they thought that some of the proposed rates were a bit high. I'm not sure if we can put it on hold or until this crisis is over and maybe get the contractors to get together.
David, can you answer that?
Let me take a stab at it. I know David will be typing as well. David, looked at certainly a lot of the different rate and fee schedules across the region. I know he had looked at really the 2003 time zone on some of the regional fees. You know, so from a cost perspective, that's what we were looking at. Most of the time, a city doesn't include a contractor in the setting of the fee schedule. Generally, that's something that happens between council and the administration.
I've got a question. How is this, the virus impacting their ability to do their work?
There's been no restriction on
Okay.
construction that's been deemed critical infrastructure.
Right.
So I think if they had somebody who was queued up to do work, but then, you know, took a step back, then they might lose that particular contract. But I know generally speaking in Alpine, most of our residents have historically struggled with getting contractors. It's sometimes a 6 to 9 month on a build. Sometimes plumbing is, you know, 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Although this doesn't impact the plumbing so much per se.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I see a lot of construction going on, so I don't see how it would really impact them. Maria, you had a comment?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Any more discussion?
Actually, David has given you all some information under chat.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the other things David is doing, he and Tony, they schedule all field visits so that we're not having any hardship on contractors or residents. That's a significant portion of their day is the field visits.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have another question. Where did he get the fees from?
What's that again?
Where did he get the fees from? Where did these come up from?
So David works back through a lot of the different regional and state level suggested pricing. He compared certainly to what happens in some of the larger cities that are maybe more on 2019 type versions, which are much higher prices. We've certainly contemplated and said, hey, you know, let's keep it lower, but we have to increase. I mean, we're from a department perspective, there's a lot of work that goes into reviewing permits and working with the contractors to ensure they're building up to the code that's been adopted by the city. And so these rates are just trying to reflect the costs that the city is incurring to do the permitting process. So there's like regional and state level fees that he'll look at. Most of our regional fees, you know, he's pivoting on El Paso, Midland, Odessa, and then goes back and does an actual kind of cost services for Alpine. So that's really where those rates came from.
Does that answer your question, Councilman?
Yes, I mean, to me, I think they're just a bit too steep for this area right now. I mean, if they're having to get certain certificates, you know, and having to pay for them over and over, I mean, I'm not sure why they're not given, or the permits, you know, why they don't have like a set amount and done yearly. Or am I wrong? Am I reading that wrong?
Well, on the permits, certainly, you know, council could take action on the fees annually. The challenge we have here is that it's been 15 years since council's taken action on the permitting fees. So we've got to get back up to what would be a fee relative to the costs that we're incurring in the department. to provide the services. Other things like plan reviews, we've historically done those at no charge. And in some of the larger plan reviews, it can take our staff, 8 to 12 hours on a commercial plan review to really go through and ensure that the code's being met according to what we've adopted as a city. And so those types of items are incumbent upon somebody wanting to build, whether it's a commercial or residential property. Now, some of the other things that I know our staff faces is we get people that come in from a construction perspective and they're trying to do stuff, I call it off of a back of a napkin or a handwritten thing. And that's really not a way to build a structure that's going to meet code and be safe for our residents in the future. So I think reviewing these and ensuring that people are meeting the code that's adopted and we're building safe, good structures is super important to Alpine.
I mean, I agree with the safety. My problem is I do feel that the fees are a bit steep right now. Because like if you look at the proposed fee for a fence that is like a 400 linear feet, then it would cost $400.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I don't see how residents could pay that, at least not in my ward. That would be too expensive.
Yeah, one of the other challenges we're having is a lot of people are just going in and starting to build fences without even coming in and getting permitted. And so we're finding situations where they're digging without dig tickets, which then puts their neighbors in the area in a challenge. So the piece around charging the fees is important to capture the cost of our work to provide those services. And really our fees, I think David just typed this in, our fees are really more regional based for this region. And he's certainly trying to get off of, the square footage of the fence, which would cost more than a linear foot calculation. So really, the fence permits now on a linear foot with the new ordinance would be cheaper than a square footage fence.
You think you touched it. You touched it a little bit when you said we have contractors that are doing work that are not don't have permits, and the only one that's suffering are the customers. The safety issue on it, also the longevity of the work that's being performed, because many of these folks, and I got to see a lot of it, that didn't have permits. They just go in there and start building, not looking at the codes with how they were supposed to build them. And I think this puts more emphasis on you got to be licensed and you got to follow the codes and get a building permit also to make sure that it is that the work is done the way it should be according to the codes. So I don't see why it's a big issue on that personally, because I drive around a lot watching some of these builders and stuff. And my home personally, when I bought it, it was rebuilt, and I see so many flaws that not even up to code. So this permit, allows the city to go in there and inspect the jobs and make sure they perform right.
Yeah, one of the things that I came across this weekend that honestly mortified me is there was a new fence that I saw the footers dug, and one of them was dug 2 feet from the gas meter, and there was no spots. And that type of behavior could really impact. I mean, that person personally could get injured, but part of the oversight that we're trying to provide too is is just to ensure that we've got a good health and safety standard out there too.
I agree with the people being certified as far as contractors. I agree with that 100%. I mean, the safety of our community is very important. I'm just kind of my issue with it is just I feel that the fees are a bit steep, at least at this time, because I know that there have been residents that have put that are trying to put fences up and stuff like that, and it's expensive, and I know they're trying to protect their children from being out in the streets, but at the same time, when the economy right now, what we're going through, it's kind of hard.
So do we change that fee when the economy gets better?
I would like I think I would like to just see them a little bit lowered.
You have a recommendation, Lucy, in respect to the amount?
I would like to talk to the contractors a little bit more and get a little bit more of a feedback. I have talked to some of them, and it's like they said, they go and they pay their permits. And so these are people that are going and paying their permits, and then they're being, the resident has to pay them. And that's where I see that it becomes expensive.
Okay.
So I would like to just see something, a little bit more lower. I'm not saying a lot, I'm just saying just a little bit.
Mhm.
A question for our city manager. What is the current penalty fee before this proposal? I'm just curious.
So the penalty fee if you don't go get a permit?
Yes, sir.
Well-
You're requesting it be increased to $500. Well, what is it currently right now?
Yeah, currently, if you don't, if you go through Chapter 18 of our ordinances and you look at it, there's not so 18-108, it says it's a Class C misdemeanor, and you'd be fined the sum not to exceed $500 a day. So the reason why the $500 point is that keeps it in our municipal court. And so this would reflect that as well.
Any more discussion? Yes, sir. Councilman Stevens.
I just kind of doing the math, kind of looking up right now about what it costs to get a lineal foot done. 6-foot fence, 6 foot high by 6 feet runs about $90. So you're talking, in terms of a lineal foot isn't a big number in the bigger picture. You take a $90 bill and make it close to, maybe $100 when you look at it. So, I appreciate, the challenge going both ways. I think part of it will be education, and maybe David, you can help us work through before we do the second reading of this to maybe give us a little bit of sense about what costs are that I think put it in perspective. That says you're trying to cover your cost. You're not trying to make any money on this deal. You're just trying to make sure you're covering the cost of the city to do this. And in order that for us as council understand if we're not involved in construction, you might be able to give us some sense about what costs are as part of the discussion, and that might help us make this easier to understand why the fees are what the fees are.
Yeah, we'll pull that together, Rick.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
more? Okay. No more discussion. So all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed? Like sign, Ramon, I don't see your hand. There you go.
And for
Thank you. Okay.
So it was 5-0?
No, I think it was 4-1.
4-1.
Motion
4-1?
carries. Let's go to item 4, city manager.
Get down on that. Discuss, consider, and take appropriate action. Oh, excuse me. Can I table item 4 sorry. That's now that we've moved the election to November, we need to go back to Brewster County and update the agreement that they had signed. You've seen the agreement in your packet, but let's table it for a couple meetings.
So I move we table item number 4 for a future meeting.
That'll
I'll
be tabled. Okay, there's a second on it. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign, motion carries. It's been tabled. Let's go to item number 5.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, item 5 is to discuss, consider, and take appropriate action on the first reading of ordinance 2020-04-03 and ordinance establishing the Transportation Committee. We had talked about establishing this a couple meetings back. This is the ordinance to codify that discussion.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that council approve the first reading of ordinance 2020-04-03 and ordinance establishing the Transportation Committee for the City of Alpine.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion on this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So the one item, Eric, I would have thought I'd seen in this, and maybe I just missed it. This tends to talk about what's going on in Alpine, which is what this is all about, because that's our 4.6 square miles of stuff where we're at. But under the general purpose, I think we need to add some words in there that take into account the impact of transportation that would move through Alpine as well.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a second?
What?
Okay, Ramon seconded that. Any discussion on this?
Can we?
You want to table it?
Yeah, can we go ahead and table it? Because I just assume, I mean, we're not in a mad rush to get this thing approved. I just assume get it right, and then we can get it approved.
Yeah, but that's my only comment, Eric, and I probably should have sent a note in earlier, but you know, that was my, cause we want to take in this broader perspective. This is great what's there. We just got to look at what's going on the outside as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're going to make a motion to table this in?
So I'll amend my motion to table this for a future meeting.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Second on that. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, so we're going to go ahead and all those in favor, raise your right hand. Against, like sign. So the motion's been tabled. Thank you.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and City Council, item 6 is to discuss, consider, and take appropriate action if needed, amending ordinance 2020-03-06, an emergency ordinance instituting emergency measures due to a public health emergency for the city of Alpine. Draft ordinance has been in your packet. I will also say that the county, as we discussed earlier today, did push their emergency order through April 30th. And so what if council takes action or determines not to take action, certainly the county has a document leading to April 30th.
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose the City Council approve the amended ordinance 2020-03-06, emergency order instituting emergency measures due to the public health emergency of the city of Alpine to align with the county as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second on this. Any discussion? Seeing none. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move over to city councilman comments and answers. None?
Oh, heck, I'll make some comments while everyone's still on the phone because we're about to send everyone out. I just want to compliment you, Mayor, Eric, and the city staff, for the great work that you all are doing in this challenging time. We've got, as we've all talked to many different citizens and business owners, they've expressed some many concerns. We got to thank them for the work that they're doing and the challenges they're taking on. And our role from the city perspective is to support them as much as possible, while at the same time, the 80% of us doing what's necessary to protect the 20% of our most vulnerable population. So this is not easy, but I think the attitude and that everyone has displayed is exemplary. No doubt we all get someone who comes after us a bit. I've had a few of those as well. After a little bit of discussions, they settle back down and they work their way through. So I just want to thank everyone.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for those comments, because City Council has been very proactive. And actually, I've got a lot of compliments on the decision that was made a few weeks ago on the ordinance. So they're saying, great job. You're looking after the safety of the community, and they're happy with that. And you're right, Councilman Stevens, there's some that give some pushback on it. But once you stop and explain, hey, it's saving lives, we can recover the money slowly but surely, then they settle down and agree with it. So great job, Council. City Manager, you've done a fantastic job in leading the way on this emergency crisis. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I would like to say thank you to the mayor and to Eric and to the chief. Y'all are doing a wonderful job. Thank you a lot.
Okay, and I didn't mean to forget you, Chief, because you've done a fantastic job out there. Okay, anybody else?
Just
Seeing
reminds me
none?
of the Brady Bunch.
What's that?
It reminds me of the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. Okay.
I guess we are, huh? Kind of.
Yeah, we are. But we'll survive. We're going to come out of this, and hopefully, if everybody does their part, we won't have any cases here. So great job, team. Y'all are doing fantastic. Now we're going to go ahead and move to executive session.
So Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
pursuant to Texas Government Code 55.071, consultation with an attorney, and 55.1.074 to deliberate on an evaluation of activities, I propose that City Council now move into executive session.
Okay, and is there a second on this?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, oppose? Betty? Betty disappeared. Okay, we'll give her a second or two.
Yeah, and remember, Mayor and Council, we will drop off of this Zoom, and we sent you all the executive session Zoom login middle of the day today. So you'll just click on that one, and we'll go over to the second Zoom room.
Okay, Betty.
A question
Betty.
on that.
Sure.
I'm not sure about the memo that came out on how to get back into Zoom. I'm not. Did a memo come out today? Okay, we have to exit this session and then go back in through a different channel. Is that correct?
Yes. It came out on a calendar invite. Let's see, it was right after lunchtime. What I'll do, Ramon, let me
If you could send it.
copy.
There you go. Yeah, send it to him again, Eric.
I'll copy that and send it to you again, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Perfect.
Betty.
What?
We were voting on going into executive session. So all those in favor, raise your right hand.
Right here.
Okay, there it is. Okay, oppose? Seeing none, we'll go into executive session. What time is it?
8:04.
7:49.
7:49, okay. Give us all a minute to get back in again.
So we leave the session.
Leave the session. Leave the meeting.
Yeah, Ramon, leave the meeting and then click on the link I just emailed to you.
I have Betty on the phone. She was
Okay.
unable to connect. Betty, can you say hi to everyone?
Hello, everybody.
Okay, Betty. I don't see Ramon on here. Let's go ahead and go into regular session then.
So,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, I propose that City Council move back into the public session.
Okay,
Second.
good. Okay, motion's made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, we're back in regular session now. What time is it?
8:05.
Okay,
So, Mr. Mayor, I propose that the City Council take no action relative to the item in executive session.
okay. Squirrel?
Do you need a second to take
Yes.
no action? Okay, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion?
No.
Okay, none. All those in favor of ending regular session, raise your right hand.
No, so,
I got my hand up.
You got your hand up? Okay, we see it.
so we're taking no action, correct?
Correct, no action.
Right.
Okay, so we're taking no action on it. So then that concludes our business. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, I propose that we go to the beach and have a Corona beer.
Hey, I'm right behind you. Y'all have a good evening. It was a great meeting. And we had some very important information from Dr. Edka and the chief and all our staff. So great job, guys.
Thanks,
We'll
Mayor.
see you in 2
Thank-
weeks. Okay, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Betty.
Bye, Betty.